I am in favor of fracking if it's done well, but I think the springs are, to me, they're almost sacred. And so I think groups like this, you all are extremely important. And I like the comment, how come we haven't done more studies recently? And we should have, but nobody is willing to pay for them. And what I'm going to tell you is that the springs are fed by two different systems. First, they merge. There's a regional flow system, which is coming from a long distance away, covers a wide area. And that's the reason that the springs continue to flow, even when there is little rainfall. There's also a local flow system. And if you get heavy rains in the Davis Mountains, the springs flow more efficiently. And we'll see if I can get these moving around right here. There are also endangered species in the springs. And this is from the board in the park. Comanche Springs pupfish and the Pecos gambusia. And the Comanche Springs pupfish come from these springs. That's Comanche Springs at normal flow. I was there 2 days ago and there was some flow, I'd say about a cubic feet per second. But once the irrigation starts, they will cease again. So the Comanche Springs pupfish does not exist in Comanche Springs. We do maintain them in some other springs that no longer flow. And I hope you'll be able to see these tomorrow. This is Phantom Lake Springs. This is a refugia built by Fish and Wildlife Service to keep the critters alive. But the springs themselves now flow only rarely. It's not due to oil and gas production, it's due to pumping of groundwater. And remember, the springs are taking water. It's kind of like something coming out of your bank account. And if we put money into our bank account, recharge, more than we spend it, discharge, water levels rise. When we take out more water than goes in, water levels fall in springs like Comanche Springs, Phantom Lake Springs. San Pedro Springs and San Antonio no longer flow. Giffen Springs still flows. I hope you'll be able to see this on your field trip tomorrow. We think, indeed we're pretty sure, that flows were much more abundant in the past. This is right in the city of Balmorhea. This is travertine. That's deposited from the spring waters. This was probably a flowing spring at some time in the past. Now, we do have some records, and one of the first records goes back to 1930-31. Here's Balmorhea right here, Rogata, here's Phantom Lake Springs, and this was mapped from 1930 and 31. It wasn't printed till 1941. There's where Phantom Lake Springs are. Here are Giffen and San Solomon. There's Saragossa, that no longer flows. There are West and East Sandia Springs. East flows, West, maybe sometimes. Now, in the 90s, I took my students out here and they did studies, and I'm going to show you the results of some of them. Well, here are water levels in 1930, 1931 from the USGS. And they didn't have them up here at Giffen and San Solomon, but they had them at Saragossa, East and West Sandia. And there's a general flow here to the northeast. You still see that today in all the maps. And I'm going to show you what these elevations were. So notice here, East Sandia Spring is 3,187 feet above sea level. So here are the data. This is from the USGS. These are from my students, their maps. And this is from that Texas Water Development Board report. I think this one is obviously an error. But if you can look at how these numbers are going down, all of them. And this is, I think that's questionable, but this is how much the water levels have dropped in the vicinity of the springs. Not from pumping oil and gas, pumping groundwater. So what happens to the springs? Here's an old one from Comanche Springs. That was, this is in cubic meters per second, I'll give you the quote, but that was measured by the US Cavalry, and then we had a few data, and then here, big scale irrigation begins, and basically it's down here. Once in a while you get a little flow in the winter. Some people wondered if we're already getting declining spring flow before we started pumping. That's when the big irrigation started. And it's a famous court case. Texas says, no man says, you can't, state can't tell you can't pump water out of your land. It's yours. Rule of capture. Well, some people think windmills might have done it. I don't know, but it's just a suggestion. Here are the springs at Balmorhea, Phantom Lake, and San Solomon. And Phantom Lake, way back about 1900, really, really flowing. And right now, San Solomon's at about a little less than a cubic meter per second, about 20 cubic feet per second. Here is Phantom Lake. Occasionally you get some flow. Here is San Solomon. Why did Phantom Lake stop flowing? It's not precipitation. This is from a master's student a few years ago. This is precipitation. That's the decline of spring flow. It's not related to the climate drying out. It's related to dropping water levels. We're pretty sure that in the past, there was a lot more water coming out. That's right behind Toya Creek, right behind Balmorhea. This is from another student's PhD, Bruce Darling, and it's kind of busy, but what it tells you is there is water where all the carbon-14 is gone. That's old water. It also has a different isotopic signature indicating it was recharged when the climate was colder. So what we get in these systems is a mixture of some very old water and recent recharge. Well, what about San Solomon Springs? The best swimming hole in Texas. Now this is a busy slide, so I apologize for that. It's from Frank Heitmuller's study. And the red and the yellow are precipitation in Balmorhea and Fort Davis. And these little diamonds are the spring flow. And here we are talking about cubic feet per second. Here we are down here. Notice we don't have a lot of data there. Unfortunately, it wasn't considered important enough to take the data. We were crazy, okay? But if you look at this, you see when you get high rainfall events, you get high discharge. That is that local component. But when it's not raining, they keep chugging along, maybe declining a little bit, but relatively steady at here about between 25 and 30 cubic feet per second. So we got that local component, that's going to be important, and the regional component. So here are those features following what Kevin's had. Here's the springs at Balmorhea. Here's Wild Horse Flat, Lobo Flat. Here's the Apache Mountains, the Toya Basin. Take us up there, Balmorhea here. And we think there's very strong evidence that there's flow coming along this. This is basically the conduit for that regional flow system. Where does the water come from? Some clearly comes or came from here, but I think others is coming here through the Davis Mountains. We'll show you that. So, the springs take flow from a wide area of Texas. But the exact paths, we still need to know that. Some of the water is really old. This came in during the Great Ice Age. And it flows through fractures and karst features that Kevin talked about in Permian and Cretaceous age carbonates. So here's that same one we showed you before. Here's Phantom Lake Springs, Giffen Springs. Out here's Diamond Y Springs. Those still flow. Comanche Springs, which no longer do. Here's Big Aguya Springs, where Balmorhea gets its water from. And we're going to talk about this flow system. Matt Juliana did his PhD with me, and he was looking at this system. Here's Phantom Lake Springs, but I think you can you see these linear patterns there? Can you guys see those? Those are fractured and karstified systems. That's the conduit for flow going here towards the springs. And the cave divers find the same orientation in those springs. Here's Matt's view of that. Here's Phantom Lake and San Solomon Springs. And these are rose diagrams. This is the fracture trend. That's Wild Horse Flats, Van Horn's out here. That's our flow system. And the cave divers, in their map, they find it going in the same direction. Yeah, if you put dye in Phantom Lake Springs, or the conduits, it comes out a few days later in San Solomon. Dump it in here, it moves very quickly to the other springs. It didn't move to Giffen Springs, which I don't know why. But we've looked at the hits, and this is from when I first came to, there's only two types of people in the world. Some were born in Texas. The rest of us wish we had been born in Texas. I'm in the latter category. But when I got here, this is my first graduate student, and she was mapping Wild Horse Flat and the Salt Basin. And the best thing we could look at is before we started pumping, the water in the Salt Basin just flowed into the Apache Mountains. The reason is that in this area, there's a lot of those really permeable features. This is not uncommon in karst. And we've mapped the pre-development heads. This is the way they were going towards the Pecos River. It used to be the Pecos River got groundwater, Kevin. Maybe not up here anymore. And here are the springs, but there is a flow system coming through here and through here. And this is the one that we looked at a number of years ago. And this is pretty well documented by chemistry and isotopes that there is flow coming from Wild Horse Flats towards the springs of Balmorhea. But it's not just the water from Wild Horse Flats. We have to have more coming in. So here are some questions that we have some ideas on. We want to know more. What is the percentage of local recharge to the springs? Where are the exact flow paths? How much water can you use from the Davis Mountains? Or for fracking without diminishing spring flows? Does water in the Davis Mountains recharge the underlying carbonate rocks? We think it does. What controls the spring locations? Where are the recharge areas? What development is permissible and where? We need more, we still need more information. Here's what we do know. The springs at Balmorhea have a large regional flow system and this diffuse local flow system. Here are the estimates. And again, these are all over a decade old. Well, here's the first one that Pam Nielsen and I did. That was our calculation of water coming from Wild Horse Flats, the percentage of total spring flow on the regional flow system. The GAM with Beach, and Kevin and I were authors on this one, came up with about the same number from Wild Horse Flats, but it might be as much as 70% of the spring flow. These are Matt Juliana's and the Water Development Boards, and these are based on chemistry. They said if we take a local water, Matt used Big Aguya Springs, and then water that from the Apache Mountains areas, and said 28 to 43%. The Water Development Board said 80%. which is right. They could all be right. It doesn't have to be the same every year. But a significant portion from that regional flow system. Now, here's the GAM. Beach et al., there's Wild Horse Flats. We know water is coming from there. And their model suggests flow going in. This is that trend. Flow going in there from the igneous rocks. And from the underlying limestones also. So we have flow coming from here and from here, feeding the springs. So there's that model. This is the Texas Water Development Board's model. They want to bring it from here. We know it comes in through here, and it looks like it's coming in here to feed the big springs. So, there's some things we really should know. And I'm going to address some questions. We know we have the large regional flow systems. We know there's a local component, but we don't know the real details of this at all. That's troubling to me. Water quality, we need more baseline data. We need better long-time flow at all 5 of the springs. It wasn't considered important enough to do it. It's important to get those data. If groundwater levels of pumping exceeds the recharge, water levels will drop. It happened at Comanche Springs, Phantom Lake, Saragossa, San Pedro Springs, and San Antonio. Flow could cease. We also have to worry, well, we are humans, we pollute. Will we cause contaminations that the springs can't be used for swimming or for the endangered species? Fracking uses a wide variety of chemicals. Not all of them are passive. Some of them are nasty. They're not all harmless. And this is a big one. And as Kevin said, you can be reasonably certain, despite what some politicians say, it's going to get hotter. We don't know how that's going to affect the water. Could go up, could go down. So let's look at this. There is a Balmorhea, there's Saragossa, here's Toyaville where the springs are. Somewhere in here, there's a local flow that gets into those springs. You got high rains down there, really kicks up there. Where are the locations for recharge? Are there some areas that are critical? We should not develop. Other areas, maybe not. We don't know where they are. We need to know. Wendy Robertson, this will be coming out soon, and her study at Balmorhea found out that sometimes you get fluctuations that the local stuff comes in only for half an hour or so from a local source. Where does it come from? And then we have that regional flow system. Here's Wild Horse Flats. We know that we have flow coming in through here. We think we're also getting water from the Davis Mountains. And the Water Development Board wants to bring it up to here, although I have some questions about that, but it's coming in this direction. So where would be the one place you wouldn't want to pump? This is not Apache. I just downloaded this from the website. Wolfcamp Water Partners project that they can draw 200,000 barrels of water a day from this Capitan Reef aquifer for the oil and gas industry. They said, we've got your water. This is not what Apache is intending to use, at least so I'm told. It's not really the Capitan Reef aquifer, because it's below that. Those Capitan Reef rocks are dry here. So where did they put it? Let me go back. There are the springs at Balmorhea. There's the flow system. I don't know if they're selling the water, but if they do, it has me concerned. My back of the envelope calculation said that would be more than half of the total flow of the springs. It's a matter of concern, and I think we need to be concerned about it. Action items. You guys are real important. You're the ones that are going to hold the state and the oil companies, etc. Maybe even the irrigators, I don't know. I won't talk about water law. I think that's going to be talked about later. I'm not sure what the legal constraints are going to be, but it does bother me. I think local committees monitoring the springs is important. I've talked with Carolyn here. I would love to see all of the springs have walkways, little nature interpretive walks, where you could go. I'll bet you most of the people in Balmorhea have never even seen Phantom Lake Springs. I'll bet you most of them haven't seen Giffen Springs. And that's just the local people. So I think that would be great. And here, we need to develop plans based upon scientific knowledge to develop the water resources in a sustainable use. And we need that baseline data. I will say, I will give Apache credits. They funded a study at UT Arlington to do some baseline studies. I don't know if that's enough. Texas Parks and Wildlife is planning a baseline monitoring study, and Apache's talking with colleagues at the Bureau of Economic Geology to maybe address some of these questions. So with that, I'm through singing for myself.